days at the stick. From who's got it better than us to brick by brick. It's always the 49ers way, from off-season to game day. Yeah, we talk back. It's the 49ers Cutback.
It's 49ers Cutback Podcast time. Welcome to the show. We're going to go through all the players on the 49ers that could possibly be restructured, extended, or cut post June 1, or in the case of Jimmy Garoppolo, which appears to be a foregone conclusion, traded to free up money so the San Francisco 49ers can pick up the players that they need to pick up from their own team and then potentially other free agents from all around the league.
Accurate, Ant. Very accurate indeed. And there's a lot of names.
Yeah, there is.
You may not think that. You may have been like, well, no, the only name that matters is Jimmy Garoppolo. Well, but you would be wrong because there's so much money that can be saved by San Francisco and by this 49ers team, Ant. An additional $20+ million that could be saved by this team if you extend certain guys, if you restructure certain guys. And let's get into this list and get into some of these guys, Ant, because there is a whole host of them. Let's start with the obvious one that is Jimmy Garoppolo, right? You can trade Jimmy Garoppolo and save $25.5 million. You take a $1.4 million dead cap hit. This is what the Niners are going to do. This is the big move that's going to free up the most amount of cap space they can possibly free up. But there's another gentleman, Ant, just under that, a guy who's making the second most money on the roster this year with a base salary of $14.15 million that you could potentially restructure and take some of that money, move it around, and free up $9.847 million this season in Eric Armstead.
Yeah, this might have to be done. They might need to go to Eric Armstead and say, hey, we need you to, take a pay cut. And this is a guy that would be willing to restructure his contract because he's from this area. And they can point out DJ Jones, and they can point out Arden Key, and they can say to him, hey, look, we want to bring back these running mates. Ultimately, these guys make you better. So it's a good situation for you, and it's a good situation for this football team. Knowing Armstead the way I do believe he would do something like that. He would restructure his contract. They'll convert some of that into signing bonus, and he's going to get money. So I think that the 49ers should do this, will do this, and they'll free up some cap space. And that's a good thing because you do need to bring back Arden Key and DJ Jones if possible. You also have other guys as well all along this defensive line that you would like to bring back. So getting those guys back is important, and this would be a nice big step in that because he does make a lot of money. Eric Armstead is getting paid a lot of money. But I'm sure that they've looked into this before, and this is something they knew they were probably going to have to do at some point.
Agree with you there. They were probably going to have to do this at some point, and it's almost $10 million that you save by restructuring him. We're not talking about an extension. We're not talking about voiding years, just restructuring the contract and how it's currently constituted and where the money is going and when it's coming out and how much of it is a bonus, how much of it is a signing bonus and things of that nature. So they can just move that money around and free up some capital and some cash right here and now this year. And yeah, it will push the money down the road and kicks the can down the road. But hey, you got to do what you got to do if you're the San Francisco 49ers. And this frees up a good chunk of money to bring in a lot of those guys that you just talked about on that D line, whether that's DJ, right? Giving him some of that chunk of change, that cheddar, Ant, whether that's Arden Key, or just signing a bunch of guys, adding depth to the roster, top to bottom, everywhere. Makes this roster better. It makes it so that, Eric Armstead doesn't need to necessarily be a guy who gets 10.5, 12 sacks, Ant. He just needs to be a guy who continue doing exactly what he did this past season for the 49ers.
Potentially, they could, by doing this, bring back all three defensive linemen that they really need to bring back.
Accurate.
Which is, DJ Jones, Arden Key, and then Jordan Willis.
True.
Those three guys are very important to this team. They've been doing, a lot of good things, and that would keep that rotation they had going during the playoffs. Of course, you have Kentavious Street also. That is somebody they could think about bringing back. But that $10 million, the way that you could structure their contracts, you could probably bring back all those guys. So that would alleviate a lot of stress for you to have to go out and draft someone. You could still draft somebody, but you could add them more to a rotation, have them come in and compete. So I think this is something the 49ers look into. Let's see if they do it. If they do it, I think we're feeling a lot more optimistic about DJ Jones, Arden Key, and Jordan Willis coming back. If not, then it's going to be slim pickings, and you're going to have to find other bargain basements. They're going to have to count on Chris Kasarik to bring other guys back.
You're not wrong, Ant. You are not wrong at all whatsoever. There is a guy that Grant Cohn brought up this week. He talked about George Kittle, and he talked about trading George Kittle. If you traded George Kittle pre-June 1st, you actually lose a bunch of money. So if you're going to trade post George Kittle, it has to be post June 1st, in which you could save $11 million, and you could also restructure that contract and save $7.8 million, but I don't think either one of us believes that's something the Niners are going to do this season.
No, I don't think they're going to go to George Kittle and ask him to restructure his contract. It's still pretty fresh. I think they're going to let this thing go a little bit. I don't think he's going to be one of the ones that they reach out to. And yeah, no, they're not going to trade George Kittle because it doesn't really make a lot of sense, especially trading him, for who that they had him trading for. They're not going to trade him for a corner that makes $16 million a year, and then all of a sudden you're out $28 million. It doesn't make a lot of sense. So I think that all these moves need to make sense. I think Armstead did make sense further along in that contract. I believe George Kittle's time to restructure will come eventually, but that is not right now.
If George Kittle has another year like this year where he gets hurt and misses extended period of time again, then yeah, I imagine the Niners would go up to him, hey, let's restructure, let's figure this thing out. You haven't been as healthy as we would like. I don't think you've been as healthy as you'd like. We're still going to pay you a butt ton of money. You're still making a lot of money. Let's just get some help in around you as well, so that way, if you do go down again, we're protecting ourselves here.
What if I told you over the 2020 and 2021 season that in both seasons George Kittle played more snaps than Deebo Samuel?
Not surprising.
No,
because the dude plays at a high level.
Well, and he's on the field a lot, right? When the times Deebo comes off, George Kittle's still out there.
He misses a handful of games every year. We said the same thing about Trent Williams, right? It feels like Trent Williams and George Kittle do about the same thing. They just miss a couple of games every year, is what it feels like.
Yeah, 2020 was kind of the outlier.
Definitely the outlier.
But yeah, no, I mean, this is something that you want George Kittle on your football team. He's one of the best tight ends in the league. You don't get rid of people like this.
As Brad said the other day on Twitter, and he's the best offensive lineman at catching the football he's ever seen.
Yeah, that's not wrong.
It's not wrong at all.
Wrong, yeah.
It's glorious, actually. I enjoyed that one from Brad. That was a good one. It was a good one. RSF Niners, Ant, with a zinger. Jimmie Ward is the next guy up on this list that could actually be restructured and actually may make a lot of sense because he's got an $8.9 million base salary, Ant, and if you restructure him, you save $5.9 million.
Yeah, I don't think they restructure him.
You don't think so?
No, I think they extend him because they'll actually save more money by extending him. By restructuring, they save about $5.9 million. By extending him, they save $6.3 million. That extra $400,000, I mean, it doesn't seem like a lot, but it seems to add up along the way. But plus, I think it's just nice to have Jimmie Ward, under contract again. I know he's getting a little bit longer in the tooth, but I think you're feeling confident he can get another 2 or 3 years out of him, especially the way that he's been playing lately, and he's been staying healthy lately.
True.
We've had the healthy years in a row for Jimmie Ward, and that's a good sign for the 49ers. So I think they'd like to bring him back. His versatility, flexibility is somebody you need on the roster. His leadership. So extending him would make a lot of sense, I think, for the 49ers.
Especially since he has no guaranteed salary this year. Everything is roster, making the active roster, playing in games, and things of that nature. So extending him would add a signing bonus in, which gives him some guaranteed money this year. It actually ends up being a win-win for him. And the Niners end up saving $6.3 million, which is a win for the Niners. So it's a win-win-win across the board, Ant.
Gotta like W's.
And when you get that many W's, Ant, you're going to take them.
You're going online.
One of them. One of them. That was solid. Next up, Dee Ford.
Yeah.
The one that everyone wants to just cut, Ant. Cut him post June 1st. Save yourself $2.4 million. But you and I were looking at this, and you were the one who brought this up to me and said, but what happens if you just restructure that contract for Dee Ford? And Ant, we found some very interesting things if you restructure. What did we find?
Yeah, it seems that you can actually save more money by just restructuring Dee Ford, $2.9 million, another $500,000. So between what you saved by extending, our boy, the safety,
Jimmie Ward.
Jimmie Ward, thank you.
Got you.
By extending Jimmie Ward and then restructuring Dee Ford, you actually saved about $900,000. That's enough to sign.
That's almost another $1 million.
Yeah, that's enough to sign somebody else. So. I think that this is something that we got to keep an eye on. I know the first note, and I was one of those ones that was like, we just probably gonna have to cut him after June 1st, to save that $2.4 million or whatever it is. But it looks like maybe restructuring might be a better avenue. He did restructure last year. He did help the 49ers. He kind of ripped up the contract that he had and did a 2-year deal. So we'll see what happens there. But it definitely looks like Dee Ford is somebody to watch and how they maneuver him this year, whether it's a post June 1 cut or if they just restructure him.
Agreed, Ant. It's going to be very interesting to keep an eye on because, you just don't know. And with his injury stuff and everything that's happened to him, is he going to retire? Would he be willing to – does he want to kick the tires? Because the Niners can't trade him. then you're not trading him away.
No.
Which means you're either cutting him and letting him walk somewhere else and figure it out, or you're just rolling the dice on him. You've already paid him a certain amount of money. You're going to be eating some of this anyway and just see what you can get out of him. And the restructuring would also save you some money in the process of being able to see. Because you'd always restructure him if he stays healthy and plays well. Well, he still keeps his value for the rest of the contract, which he's got one more year after that, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that's... I'm glad I'm not in their shoes and having to make this front office decision.
Or in Dee Ford's shoes.
Yeah, because Dee Ford is a good football player, but he's just not healthy. And he hasn't been healthy since the middle of 2019. He was dynamic in that half season that he played, and then when he came back in the playoffs, he wasn't the same player, but still made some noise.
True.
You would love to have this sort of talent. I just don't know if that ship has sailed. And then, can you justify keeping this guy around and potentially eating up a roster spot if he's not going to be able to go? I think this is going to be a tough situation for the 49ers. They have started to turn the page on some of these injury-riddled players. Will Dee Ford be next? Is it worth it for them just to cut him June 1 and just be done with it? Or should they try to restructure and see what he's got? That's not for me to decide. That's for John Lynch, Kyle Shanahan, and Parag Marathi to
Accurate, Ant. Very accurate. Up next, though, Mike Mcglinchey, a guy that we've heard some people. I'm not going to put everybody out there. I'm not going to put all of the faithful in this category, but some of the faithful just want the Niners to trade this guy pre-June 1st, because if you do, you save the $10.8 million that you gave him by going with that fifth-year tender. However, if you watch the end of the season, you watch Mike Mcglinchey not on the field, and you watch Tom Compton have some moments, right? Looking really good as a run blocker, but then struggling mightily in the playoffs. And I think you and I both believe if Mike Mcglinchey was out there at right tackle, maybe we get some better right tackle play in the playoffs at least. You save that 10.8, that's nice. However, if you extend him, if you renegotiate that contract, Ant, you save $7.86 million, meaning he has a cap hit number this season of just $3 million. That's a steal for a starting right tackle in the league. Do the Niners need to consider extending this man, saving some of that money, and shoring up that right tackle spot?
Yeah, we've been pretty consistent about this, that we believe not only would he be on the football team, but they might be extended. I think he is an extension, person that they could bring back. Somebody that he needs to probably sign an extension, because $10.8 million getting off your books, it sounds great. Like that makes a lot of sense. I understand why people are saying that. You trade him, save $10.8 million, and then move in a different direction. But what direction is that? What is that available player going to look like? I've seen some people say Morgan Moses, the guy that was with the Jets last year. But is that really an upgrade? Is that an upgrade over Mike Mcglinchey? I don't think so. I think Mike Mcglinchey fits the system. He fits in well with this locker room. He fits in well with this offensive line. And I think that they would like to bring him back. And I think it makes a lot of sense to extend him and make sure that you are set and established at that right tackle spot for years to come. And so I think they'll go that way. I think Kyle Shanahan's confident with what he can do in the run game, and that he, what his limitations are in the pass game. And I think he can get around it, especially with Trey Lance being in the offense now. Trey Lance can extend plays and do that sort of thing. So I think this is the better avenue to go. Unless you can tell me a better player, a player that they can fill that role with that is better than Mike Mcglinchey right now. And it can't be Tom Compton, because I don't believe he's better than Mike Mcglinchey. So there needs to be another avenue in which they get a better right tackle. And if that right tackle's not there, you need to bring back Mike Mcglinchey, whether that is for 1 year or an extension to where you can free up cap space. And everyone wants to bring back Laken Tomlinson. An extension of Mike Mcglinchey just might bring back Laken Tomlinson.
$7 million, right? $7 million. It's almost $8 million, actually, in theory. So we're talking about a situation in which Lincoln, we brought this up and talked about this, could be making close to $9 million. Could be making close to $9 million, $10 million. That's 7, makes that number a little bit more palatable and makes it a little bit closer, at least close enough to take a shot. And maybe he'll take a home team discount, and maybe he comes in and is willing to this year make that $7 million, right? That $7.5 million number, and then backload that contract down the road for him somewhere else to make up that money that he'd be missing out in year 1 of the contract. So we'll see. Now, Lincoln is getting $1.24 million from the 49ers this year. So it's like, hey, we basically got you a signing bonus already, You just take $7.5 million. You got the 1.2 coming already. It's
for the restructuring that he did a couple
for the
years
voiding,
ago.
yeah. So it's basically $9 million already, right, guys? It's close enough. That could be the case. The Niners do have that going for them in that category as well. Although, like, you can just throw that back in the face. I did y'all a solid. Now you can do me a solid as well. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But the Mike Mcglinchey one makes sense, and it is something that could happen. Maybe every 49ers fan is screaming right now at the top of their lungs, do not do it. But look, it's possible. And you can extend that contract to just an additional 2 years, just a 3-year extension, and still be able to move off of him if you don't see the things you want out of Mike Mcglinchey, and it won't be the end of the world.
What do you think is more likely? They extend Mike Mcglinchey or that they re-sign Laken Tomlinson?
They extend Mike Mcglinchey.
Yeah.
I think that's the most likely scenario.
Yeah.
And I think people are going to lose it.
Maybe. Yeah, people might lose it. But I think you're right. I think that might be the most logical situation, that they bring back Mike Mcglinchey and extend him for a few more years, because Laken Tomlinson is getting expensive, and he's getting expensive real quick, and we don't even know how it's going to heat up in the next week and a half, week or so.
Accurate, Ant. Very accurate indeed. Samson Ebukam is the next guy up on this list, Ant. An $8.25 million or $8.25 million cap hit, 5.9 base salary, extending and negotiating with him and bringing him back on a little bit of a longer term contract can free up $3.972 million, almost $4 million. This kind of feels like a no brainer to me.
I would do it.
I would.
I would do this.
I mean, nothing that we just saw out of Samson Ebukam last year in terms of how he progressed throughout the season makes me not want him on the roster in the future.
Right. And I mean, depending on how you work out the extension, you could bring this guy back, and once again, you bring back Jordan Willis, so you're getting a 2-for-1 deal there. Or you're bringing back, Arden Key, depending on how much he's offered or how much he's going to make in his first year. Between Armstead and Ebukam, you could come with enough money to bring every single defensive lineman back that you had last year, and everyone agrees that rotation was pretty solid. You reached out in the draft and then drafted another young edge guy or even an interior defensive lineman that you felt could take it to the next level. We're not even mentioning that Javon Kinlaw will be back, so it will actually be a better rotation overall. I think it's something you can live with, and Samson Ebukam proved to be getting better and better as the season went on. I think they're actually excited about him, and him and Arden Key on the same side during obvious pass situations became pretty lethal. Both of those guys making plays. Ebukam making a lot of plays against Green Bay Packers in the divisional round. So I think that's an obvious choice. Go ahead and make that extension. We'll see if it gets done.
I agree with you. We'll see if it gets done. I wouldn't hate this one at all, Ant. I know not everyone, but some of you may be sitting there going, it's only $4 million. That's not a huge chunk of change, but everything starts to add up at some point.
It's a lot.
And that's a nice chunk of $4 million plus keeping a guy around who's shown a lot of promise and heavy amounts of development throughout the year and throughout the season. But speaking of a guy, Ant, who could use an extension, who's making $6.5 million already this upcoming season, which is kind of crazy, especially when you find out that it's Emmanuel Moseley at the cornerback position, Ant. An extension saves $2.7 million. That brings that number down from 6.5 to about 4.5, which seems about in the wheelhouse for the 49ers. The only question is at 26, as an undrafted guy, is Emmanuel Moseley a long-term answer at the cornerback position, and does it make sense to extend him?
Yeah, as a second cornerback, he sure is.
Agreed with you there.
He is. I mean, last year he took on the role of being the number one cornerback. I think you're excited about bringing Emmanuel Moseley back. I think this is someone you can get excited about. $6.5 million does he probably deserve that money after the season he had last year? Yeah, he does. But if you can extend him and bring down his salary for this season
and still make sure he gets that money down the road,
make it easier for you to bring back Jason Verrett and to bring back K'Wan Williams, fulfill this secondary up a little bit. That's what you're trying to do, because you need to make sure you have the depth. You've seen last year that people get hurt. When they get hurt, all of a sudden you have to bring in bargain basement people off the streets, and then start having some issues. So I think that it makes a lot of sense. We'll see if they do. I think they'd like to keep him because you don't want him to hit the open market the next year.
No.
He gave up 0 touchdowns. I mean, that's something to say. Something to say about a player and how they've developed. So I think they would like to bring Emmanuel Moseley back, and they would like to extend him. We'll see if they're able to get it done in the offseason. If they are, then they're going to free up some cap space, maybe be able to bring back Jason Verrett, K'Wan Williams, keep this whole thing together, because I think the defense played pretty good together. And imagine if you just add a couple of pieces here or there, and they gel even more into D'Amico Ryan's system, you might be talking about a top 3 defense in the league.
And we've gone through and talked a little bit about what some of these numbers are, and we're going to be having an episode coming out that's going to go through a lot of these free agent values and talking about these types of things. And Moseley and what he's making this year and what the projected numbers are for Verrett and K'Wan Williams. This right here, this restructuring allows you to potentially get both guys back. Just as one thing.
Yeah. I mean, that's what a lot of these moves do, right? Armstead gets you a couple guys back. Ebukam gets you another guy back.
True.
You start looking here and there, and there's places where you can free up money to be able to bring people back. Next thing you know, from making some of these roster moves, you're able to bring back Raheem Mostert, and you're able to bring back Laken Tomlinson and DJ Jones, and Jaquiski Tart. It's important. You need to be able to bring back your guys and then still have money out there to be able to bring in other free agents. which I'm really excited about to talk about next week, about all the free agents the 49ers are going to have at different positions that they could possibly bring in.
So many options.
Because you can add to this roster, and, there's a lot of dynamic players out there, whether that's Cordell Patterson or, other guys, maybe a possible Evan Ingram or something like that, weapons that the 49ers could bring in to make their offense even more dynamic. But you have to have money to be able to do that. Jimmy Garoppolo is a big cog, but he's not the only cog in getting that done. Some of these other players, you have to go to them and restructure. And I mean, you're seeing the Saints do it in a big way right now, freeing up almost $30 million with a couple of moves. Which
is kind of crazy to think, because you and I had no clue how it was going to happen. Yeah. No clue, and just like that, it's all gone.
They're only $44 million over now.
Halfway there, Ant.
Yeah.
They're halfway there. They're looking good now.
They still have no starting quarterback, but they're halfway there.
Well, you got Taysom Hill under contract still.
You still have no starting quarterback.
You're not wrong, Ant. They have no starting quarterback at all. But the Niners do have themselves a very solid kicker in Robbie Gould, and the man is golden in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Absolutely golden. A little shaky in the regular season this year, but golden. Set to make $5.5 million this year. A lot of people are saying Robbie Gould just had himself a nice year. Why don't you just go ahead and trade the man? Just trade him post June 1, because you save $4 million if you do that. Ed, just trade him. However, you could just make sure that you have yourself still a solid kicker and extend him and save $2.3 million. What do you think is more likely?
I think it's more likely to extend him. The one thing about a kicker is once you find one that's consistent, you go ahead and stay with that kicker. You do not want to end up in a situation like we were during the Harbaugh days, where we were going through kickers because we couldn't find one that could consistently make kicks. You saw how good Akers was, where he was making kicks all the time. Well, that's how Robbie Gould is in the playoffs. When it's the biggest moments of the game, when there's cheerleaders dancing around him, when there's people, running past him, and
when Jalen Ramsey has to get in that man's face to try and get in his head.
Yeah, and you're not going to get in his head. He's perfect in the playoffs. He does not miss. There is something to be said about that. I mean, we can talk about the fact that, he gets hurt every once in a while, or the fact that, plus 50, he's not as accurate as he used to be, or as good as he used to be because he doesn't have a strong leg. But the thing is, from 50 in, and that's where you want to be a lot, he's pretty dead on. So I think you want to keep this guy around. Extending him makes sense. He's motivated to win a Super Bowl. He's not motivated to make a lot of money, but you have to make sure you pay him to make it worth him being away from his family, because his family still lives in Illinois, in the Chicago area. You need to make sure he's motivated to stay here. And one of those ways you do is by building a good roster around him, because he wants to win a Super Bowl. That's what his motivation is: Super Bowls and Hall of Fames. And the way you get into the Hall of Fame is by making clutch kicks, so you need to be with a big-time team. So he wants those big moments, and nothing shakes him. I'd bring him back in a heartbeat.
I would bring him back in a heartbeat too, and I would extend him, give him a couple more years. Let's get this contract to 3 years and keep that window open. The window's open right now. Nothing says that this window won't be open in the next 3 years or so. You're going to have all the talent and the young pieces. You have the rookie scale quarterback as well still on the books. You can build this team to still win and compete and be in that position to win a Super Bowl 3 years down the road. So let's keep him around for 3 more years. Let's spread some of that money out. Let's save 2.3 this year so you can continue to bring guys in. And also, Answer, you have the cap space to maybe extend right now. Not maybe, you're definitely doing this. Extending Deebo Samuel. Because if you play it right, you could save $2.4 million. If you play it right with Deebo Samuel, if you extend him right now. However, I think you and I both believe, right, if you're extending Deebo Samuel right now, you're going to give him a nice chunk of money right now, because if you make all of these other moves on top of the Jimmy Garoppolo trade, you bring in the right guys that you want, you're going to be able to pay him a little bit more this year, so that maybe he takes a little bit of a dip, or maybe not as big of a jump next season, so that money can go to Nick Bosa as well.
Yeah, this is something they've done pretty consistently. They did this with Trent Williams, where his number wasn't that big his first season. And then it slowly, so I believe it was like 6 or 7 million in 2021, and then 2022 it's around 14 million. It's going to continue to increase. What they're doing is allowing that money from all the TV deals and stuff and the salary cap to go up for these big numbers to hit. You expect something similar from Deebo Samuel. So I think that, yeah, they'll work out an extension. Will it benefit the 49ers as far as saving money? Probably not. Some of these moves are going to help pay Deebo Samuel, but you need to make sure you keep him around. The only way you could see them keeping his number super low and letting it go up in a big way in the next few years would be if they plan on going all in on one Super Bowl this year. If they do that, then they're going to want to keep everyone's number down, and they're just going to want to go for it and then let it wreak havoc in the offseason. But I think this is the best way to handle it. I think it will go up, like you said, a little bit, whether they pay him 7, 8, 9 million this year. I think it will be a lower number, and then eventually it's gonna jump up, and there's gonna be some crazy years where he's making $20+ million. But I believe that's where the wide receiver market's going anyways. Deebo Samuel deserves $19 to $20 million a year for what he adds to a football team. There's absolutely no one like him. There's no one that can do the things he can do. The only one that can has a knee issue, and he may never play football again.
Accurate answer, and no one's even talking about him, and no one should until he can stay healthy. Also, if he does stay healthy, come join the 90-man roster.
Well, what's funny is everyone's going to be looking for a Deebo Samuel, though, right?
Accurate.
Everyone's going to be going through players in the draft and free agents and saying
Kyle literally drafted 2 of them back to back after each other.
Which one can be the next Deebo Samuel? The problem is he's a unicorn. There's no one like him.
Nope. There will always be guys who get compared to him, and there'll be guys who are Deebo-esque, Ant, but no one quite like Deebo Samuel. And Ant, you brought something up in the last discussion about Deebo Samuel. The number stays low if they go all in. Well, if the Niners are going all in, there's a name that not a lot of people have thought about or even discussed. Restructuring, potentially even renegotiating the contract, especially if he only wants to play one more year. And Alex Mack, the 37-year-old center, 13 seasons in, he came to San Francisco because he wants to win a Super Bowl, Ant. If the Niners are going all in and this man goes, I want just one run. I just want 1 year, guys. That's all I'm looking for is 1 year. He's got 2 years left on his deal. He's got the 2022 season and 2023 seasons left on his deal, but he could go to Kyle Shanahan and be like, listen, I'm going to do one more. Just one more, that's it. The Niners, if they wanted to, couldn't renegotiate that contract. He could decide to take less money. If he renegotiated, he saves $3.184 million. But let's say he comes back to Kyle and says, you know what? I'm not 100% sure. I think I'm going to play 2 more years, Kyle. I think I'm going to be here for the next 2, which would be great for the San Francisco. I think you and I both agree with that. The Niners could still restructure him and save almost $2 million.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's an avenue, right, for them to be able to free up some money from Alex Mack, and with that money, turn around and sign Tom Compton and Daniel Brunskill and bring those guys back, as low budget guys that can help along this offensive line. And we already seen that Tom Compton can play and be, a very formidable force as somebody coming off the bench. I don't know if you want him to start. The question is, at what point, with Laken Tomlinson's money, do you look over and just be like, you know what? We need to make sure we go a different route. And if that's Daniel Brunskill, if that's Aaron Banks, if that's Jalen Moore, whoever that is, we need to make sure we're bringing we have the right guy because we just can't afford to pay it. It might be nice to have a Daniel Brunskill and a Tom Compton. So freeing up money from Alex Mack will give you that ability to do so. So, yeah, I mean, it's something I'm sure they would talk to him about if they needed that money. I think there's a lot of avenues for the 49ers to go after. Of course, the best situations are to not have to restructure contracts. If you don't, then it makes it easier for you. But I think they're at a point where they're going to have to. I think they understood that last year in the way that they were handling business. And they're going to have to continue to do that in the future. I think this is just the way that you have to build. It's an arms race now. These guys are in the midst of it. They need to keep up with the Rams. They need to keep up with the Cowboys. They need to keep up with the Green Bay Packers and these teams that are building these great teams. And you got Seattle right up in the Northwest up there that has $38 million in cap space and possibly trading DK Metcalf for a first-round pick. So I think it's going to get interesting, but there's a lot of great teams, and you got to make sure you're staying up there with all of them or maybe even overtaking all of them.
Right, Dan, and one of the ways you do that is making sure that the talented players on your roster don't walk away and leave, right? When you have the opportunity to bring them back in and re-sign them, keep them here, you do it. And one of those guys that you could do that with and save money as well in the process is Dre Greenlaw. You could extend this man, save $1.26 million in the process. A guy who's coming off of basically an injury-plagued 2021 campaign. He had a great 2020, didn't play anything in 2021 outside a handful of games, and ended up going out yet again in the NFC Championship game. Some would say his value is very high, but I think his value is dropped a little bit because of all the injury stuff. And I wouldn't say a lot, but enough that maybe the Niners could keep this guy around on a little bit more of a friendly contract, at least for the next 3 years or so, while you have this Super Bowl window open and available.
The only good thing that came out of Dre Greenlaw being injured this year is the fact that he didn't reach the Pro Bowl potential that he has.
Accurate.
If he would have reached that Pro Bowl potential, his salary would have went up dramatically, and they wouldn't have been able to keep him. I believe that's why you want to extend him during this offseason. I mean, at worst, you let him play it out, and then you work it out, try to work out something. If it doesn't work, you get a comp pick for him. But I think in a perfect world, you would like to re-sign this guy to an extension. You'd like to keep this linebacker core together. Of course, you would like Alshire to be a part of it. But I think if you could keep Warner and Greenlaw together and then just have a rotation at the other spot where it's Alshire right now, but it's going to be somebody else, and you just keep doing that, you can feel pretty good about how formidable that group is, because nobody can deny that when Fred Warner was playing during the season, that he played better along Dre Greenlaw than he did Alshire. So I think this would be important for the 49ers, bringing back Dre Greenlaw. And yeah, if they can sign him to extension, I feel really good, because I have a feeling that if he plays 17 games in 2022, that we're going to be talking about him being a Pro Bowl player, and then there would be no way the 49ers could bring him back. They wouldn't be able to afford the salary.
Agreed with you there. They wouldn't be able to. Dre Greenlaw hitting a Pro Bowl level would be disastrous for the San Francisco 49ers before you can extend him. And everything that just happened is kind of like it's not a miracle, but it's lucky. It's a lucky break for San Francisco. Unlucky for Dre Greenlaw. The Niners will still take care of this man. It's not like he's not going to get paid anything, but you don't have to necessarily pay him at the premium premiere of what he actually is, which is a Pro Bowl level, one of the best cover linebackers in all of football, and one of the best surefire tacklers at the linebacker position in all of football. You don't have to necessarily pay him at the top dollar, at the premium spot that he probably deserves, which is nice for San Francisco, and take advantage, strike while the iron's hot. I would say do it, pull the trigger on it, get it done. For me, it's a no-brainer. And we'll dive a little bit more into this next week in later episodes, talking about linebackers and free agency, what they should do at the linebacker spot. We'll dive a little bit more into it there. But one of the last names I want to talk about, and it's a name that it's kind of just unknown. It's an unknown name, an unknown situation. He's 25 years old. They traded for him in the middle of this season, was Charles Omenihu. Jordan Willis is a guy they let walk. They will not let walk, but let him go into free agency this upcoming season. He was turning 27, I believe. He also was suspended and missed a chunk of time. Charles Omenihu showed a lot of promise. The numbers and the stats were nice when he was in Houston with the Texans. He came over here and did some nice things and some big things in the playoffs. And 25, he's only 3 years into his career. Last year of his contract. If you extend him, you save $1.26 million, and he is an unrestricted free agent after the next season. What does an extension, do you think, look like for him? And do you think it would make sense for the Niners to free up some of that money and keep this guy around for a couple more years?
It makes sense for the 49ers to extend him. It doesn't make sense for Charles Omenihu.
Agreed.
If Charles Omenihu can go through one full year against in Chris Kasarek's defense, he didn't have that, but he had great production in the time that he was here. If he can get the open market with that ability, he's going to be worth a lot more money. They've seen that these guys can make money playing for Chris Kasarek, and I think Omenihu's going to want to capitalize on that. Because he is a young guy, he knows he's got a couple of contracts in him, and you want to strike while the iron's hot. So would the 49ers love to get some of these guys, on extensions right now? Yeah.
100%.
But I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think Omenihu signs a contract. I think he's willing to test free agency next year because he thinks he can have it.
As he should.
Season. Yeah, he should. And that's why it's a little bit more difficult. Look at Arden Key. He signed a minimum, contract with the 49ers, and now his market value is going to be pretty good.
It's going to be really good.
And we're going to talk about that on an episode, what his market value actually is, because there's some numbers being put out there for these guys. And I think that, you would like to save another $1 million for Charles Omenihu, but I don't think that's what's going to happen because, potentially, right, this guy he's one big year away from getting paid out. And that's what it's about. This is a business. This upcoming
season could be that year.
Yeah, this is a business.
Either way, he's betting on himself, right? Either way he is. He's either betting on himself right now or he's betting on himself in 2 years. Because I would imagine his contract extension wouldn't be more than about an additional year. It would be a 2-year thing, right? He'd be under contract for this upcoming season and one more year. So that way, at age 26, he can go out and try and get that big contract.
Yeah, and he still hopes he can start. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
That's the thing. So I think that there's some of these guys you want to bring back. You want to be able to extend them. You want to get them on cheap contracts. The problem is these players are also businessmen as well, and they understand it's time for me to capitalize on all the momentum I've created as a player. And when it comes down to it, they're trying to change their family's life forever. They're dedicating themselves to it's a game, and you want to win. But when it comes down to it, they want to make sure that their family's taken care of for years to come. And so they're going to do whatever they can. And $1 million is a lot of freaking money. We look at it like singular numbers sometimes. Oh, it's just 5. Oh, you could take 4. But to a family like that, it's huge. It can change everything.
It's generational wealth also.
It is.
And we're talking about changing, like you said, your family's life forever. But we're talking about, an additional $1 million is you being able to invest that so that way, your kids aren't ever worried about finances. They can go follow their dreams, do whatever they want to be the person they want to be, live the life that they want to be, change the world the way they want to change the world. This is
change the world however they want to change the world, huh?
Oh, yeah. Whatever impact they want to have.
Yeah, gotcha.
I meant in a positive way.
Okay,
not like maniacal evil.
I just thought you were going full
lightning bolts.
I thought you were going full Tony Robbins right there. Anthony Robbins. Yeah.
Good old Tony Robbins.
Yeah.
Good old Tony Robbins. But anyway,
change the world however you want to change the world.
Everyone, just stand up and do arm circles. Just do some arm circles. You gotta get your brain warm.
Oh wow.
Look, Cutback Crew, of all the names that we just talked about, which guy do you think Niners should extend or restructure? And if you do every single one of the guys that we just named and talked about, every single one of them, if it all falls into place exactly the way it's supposed to, the Niners save probably, I think it's an additional $29 million, which is more than Jimmy Garoppolo. Look at that, Ant. We could just hold on to Jimmy and just do everybody else and save more money, son.
No.
You do both?
Jimmy Garoppolo is the main cog, and then I
100%.
think they do the restructurings as needed in priority.
Agreed with you.
You're not going to do more than you need to do. You're going to do just what you need to do. You feel to
make
get
sure
yourself,
you get the players.
Yeah, get the players, but also to make sure you're can get everyone back comfortably and under the salary cap. That's what's important. 49ers still believe the salary cap is a real thing, and they operate as such. But this is going to be an interesting offseason because I think they are going to have to push the boundaries from what they normally do.
Agreed. They're definitely have to push the boundaries from what they normally do. And we may see a couple more voided contracts and money being pushed down the road and us eating some dead cap down the road. But as long as they don't get into crazy New Orleans Saints territory, I think you and I will both be happy with the decisions that they've made. And I do agree. They are going to only extend and restructure as needed. They're not just going to go to all these guys right off the bat and go, you're going to take less money. You're going to take less money. We're going to push that money down the road. We're going to extend you and void some years. It's going to be as needed. So if they only need to free up an additional 10, there may only be a couple of restructurings, and maybe it's only Eric Armstead, or maybe it's a couple other guys.
Top two guys that either get extended or restructured. Who you got?
I would say Armstead and Mcglinchey. I think those are the two.
Yeah, I think it's going to be Jimmie Ward getting extended and Armstead being restructured.
Okay,
I think those are the most likely for me, but I think Mcglinchey is nearby.
He's close in that category.
Yeah,
I think those three are the most likely scenarios. But Cutback Crew, let us know who you think the most likely are. Let us know which guys you want extended, which guys you want restructured. We want to hear from you on this. And make sure you're subscribed if you have not already, because you don't want to miss any more of the content coming out this week. You don't want to miss our discussions on Trey Lance. Is he ready or not? You don't want to miss our discussions on where we think Jimmy may land, where that ship is going to dock, Ant. And they definitely, Ant, don't want to miss out on PFF's value of 49ers free agents. That's a doozy of an episode that you're not going to want to miss out this week.
Yeah, you don't want to miss that episode, because once those numbers are out, we get to talk about exactly if the 49ers should bring back these guys at those numbers or whether they can't. And so we had to make some hard decisions. We had to look at these players and be like, you know what, even though I want him on the football team, it might not make sense. These are the hard decisions that are going to have to be made by this front office for the 49ers and Kyle Shanahan. And we get to dive into it. So if you want to know what these potential contracts could look like, make sure you jump into that episode and we'll have a fun conversation about it.
We're going to have tons of fun all week long. We're going to have tons of fun with the Combine live stream Thursday, so make sure you're here for that, 5:30 p.m. Pacific time. Tons of fun next week, Ant, with free agency content aplenty, wrapping up and sort of recapping the Combine as well, and some standouts and maybe some flops as well, if some guys underperformed that we were hoping to see do better. We'll see you for all of it, and until the next one, Cutback Crew and the Faithful, stay safe.
And remember, the right way
is always the 49ers way.